Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name's Kevin, I'm a geek, you are watching Kevin the Geek. And if you missed yesterday's Good Friday movie reaction, I checked out the Monty Python movie, Life of Brian. It was something that I'd wanted to watch for a number of years and people had always told me good things about it, yet at the same time, knowing that there are some elements that could be considered a bit controversial. Some from a transgender point of view, some from a religious standpoint. Personally, I didn't feel that it was attacking anything. I thought it was very inclusive and very humorous, because it was very clearly a satirical movie. And so we're going to check something out today which is sort of linked to it. So on the day that it premiered in the UK, some of the Monty Python crew appeared on a chat show that was happening at the time. And that is a chat show called Friday Night, Saturday Morning. Now this was a UK chat show which ran between September 1979 and April 1982, so it was sort of short-lived, but the kind of twist with it is it had no regular host. It would rotate and they would have different celebrity hosts at different times, and it is notable for being the only television show which was hosted by a former UK Prime Minister, and there was a period of time which was hosted by Harold Wilson. So that is interesting in and of itself. But the episode we're checking out today, from the 9th of November 1979, this particular one was hosted by Tim Rice, who is probably most famous for having done a lot of collaborations with Elton John, and in particular Andrew Lloyd Webber for musicals, and probably one of the most famous ones, and ironic that it kind of has a bit of a link here, is that he was one of the lyricists for Jesus Christ Superstar, which when that came out as a musical, that was also hit by controversy. I mean, some religious groups didn't like the fact that there was the romantic aspect between Mary Magdalene and Jesus, which has always been a bit of a hotbed for controversy. They didn't like the fact that Judas Iscariot was shown to be in a bit of a sympathetic light. People have always just gone, oh, Judas is this horrible person, he sold out Jesus and he deserved to be burnt and stoned to death and blah. But I think realistically, if you think about it, I don't think in reality there was the full-blown, no, he is absolutely evil kind of thing. I think realistically, let's say the situation did indeed happen, which of course is, up for debate. If you are friendly with someone and have been friends with them for a number of years, there would be that doubt in your mind for selling them out, I would say, to the Romans. But there was a lot of controversy around that, so it's interesting that Tim Rice has that link there. I believe I've got the full episode of this. There was some that just pretty much had the debate in it, some that it was the whole thing. I think I've got the whole thing. But we've got John Cleese and Michael Palin from the Monty Python crew. They effectively are defending Monty Python's Life of Brian in this debate. And then you have Mervyn Stockwood, who at the time was the Bishop of Southwark, and then Malcolm Muggeridge, who was a broadcaster and a noted Christian, and they're effectively arguing against the movie. So it's going to be interesting. Obviously, if you want to put any comments down below, please feel free to do so, but please keep any comments respectful. You know how I work. I won't get into big political and ethical debates. If you want to have a discussion, please do so in a respectful manner. That's all I ask. So let's check out this edition of Friday Night, Saturday Morning, the Life of Brian debate.
Friday night, Saturday morning, but yesterday's gone, there's a weekend dawning.
Not gonna lie, I like this intro. Thank you to whoever uploaded this onto YouTube and got this whole version up there. Really respect you for it.
Oh, it's time to relax again. Friday night, Saturday morning blast.
Oh wow, he looks really young.
Good evening. Tonight, every expense spared. Guests include Paul Jones and the Blues Band, the author of the book More Frequently Stolen from Public Libraries Throughout the World Than Any Other, that's Norris McWhirter, and 4 gentlemen who will be discussing a controversial film inspired by the New Testament. Only yesterday, in The Scotsman, a prominent news item headed New Superstar Row revealed that the film Jesus Christ Superstar has this week been banned from a cinema in the Western Isles as blasphemous, a curse placed on another remote Scottish cinema which dared to screen Superstar in 1976 led to the recent closure of that particular house of entertainment. If Superstar still has this trouble nearly 10 years after its creation, what hope does Monty Python's Life of Brian have today? Soon, the opinions of John Cleese, Michael Palin, Malcolm Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. Here's a moderately controversial clip from the film.
Okay, which ones are going to be? We have some technical difficulties here. Okay, fair enough. Tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. Yeah. Oh, there we go. I mean, yes, no. Oh no, is it working? Great start. Great start. Anytime today. Oh. Oh. Hey!
Hello, Mother.
Don't you hello, Mother me! What are all those people doing out there?
Oh, well,
Come on, what have you been up to, my lad?
I think they must have popped by for something.
Popped by? Sworn by, more like? What are you doing out there?
They started following me yesterday.
Well, they can stop following you right now!
I like this scene, it was good.
Stop following my son! You ought to be ashamed of yourselves! There's no Messiah in here! He's reporting no Messiah! Now go away! Right, my man, what have you been up to? Pull out with it!
Well, they think I'm the Messiah, Mum.
Oh, they skipped the nudity there.
He's not the Messiah! He's a
Very naughty boy.
I'm his mother, that's who!
Hail to his mother.
Now, don't think you can get around me like that. He's not coming out, and that's my final word.
So, I want to provide clarity, just in case there's anyone happens to be watching this who has not seen the movie. So obviously Brian gets believed to be a messiah despite not really holding any prophecies or teachings. He tries to do a little bit as a disguise to run away from the Romans, and then when he just tries to escape from this people, a few of them follow him, and then it's this mob mentality that just comes in. And I think that is what it is. I don't know, what's the word? Satirizing? You know what I mean? You know, it's being satirical. And, you know, it's the whole mob mentality. That's the thing that it's doing about. So, you know, I can understand why some people may perceive it the wrong way, but that's the way I read it.
That extract featured Graham Chapman as Brian and Terry Jones, who also directed the picture, as Mandy, mother of Brian.
Oh, her name was Mandy, I didn't know that.
With us tonight, another one-third of Monty Python, John Cleese and Michael Palin.
Oh my God, He literally looks like he stepped off the set of Fawlty Towers, doesn't he? Literally, he is full-blown Basil there. Look at the set furniture.
BBC cutbacks.
Michael, why the name Brian?
Good point.
I don't know. We've always used Brian in Python to portray a certain sort of character, fairly anonymous, and I apologise to anyone called Brian, slightly sort of...
I mean, there's a good chance of...
dim. Not dim, that's not fair. It's slow to catch on.
And there's a fighting chance of at least one Brian watching tonight, so be careful.
I don't know. Have you seen the figures? No, actually, John was in a sketch about a footballer being interviewed in one of the very early Python shows, and it was all, Brian, there's the ball in the back of the net, Brian.
I'm opening a boutique, Brian.
I really need to see basically the rest of the Monty Python stuff, because literally all I've seen so far is Life of Brian. I've not seen Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I've not seen any of the TV show. What was it? The Monty Python's Flying Circus, I want to say. I could be wrong there. But yeah, I really need to check out more Monty Python stuff.
So it's one of the funny names, isn't it? It's like Trevor and Kevin. I mean, they're just funny.
Whoa! 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 Excuse me? What the hell?
I'm opening a boutique, Brian. But it's one of the funny names, isn't it? It's like Trevor and Kevin. I mean, they're just funny.
I'm sorry. Well, right, maybe I've now got to be offended with John Cleese about that. Not only because Kevin, but also Trevor, which is my mum's husband's name. What's funny about Kevin and Trevor?
What inspired the film, Life of Brian? I mean, how did that strange idea take root in whose skull did it take root?
Well, we're not exactly certain. It's always difficult to find the exact moment when it came up. But I know that when we were going around the world, sort of doing premieres for the Holy Grail, we had a lot of time to spare in airports and cafes and restaurants. We got to thinking about a new film and what particular area we might go in. And we were still keen to do a historical film, more fun, dressing up and all that. We'd done the Bowler-Hatted City Gents on Python. And I think it was Eric who came up with this title out of the blue called Jesus Christ, Lust for Glory.
Whoa, that would have been a whole different movie.
When we started talking about it, we actually explored the idea of doing a comedy film about Jesus, with all the jokes about someone trying to book a table for 12 at the Last Supper. So, Saturday night I'll do you 3 4s. Come in tomorrow, no, it's got to be tonight, and all those jokes. And the more that we read about Jesus and the background to his life, it was quite obvious that there was very little to ridicule in Jesus' life. And therefore we were sort of onto a loser. The characters we like to portray in Python are failures, are dim, are idiotic, are sort of incapable in one way or another. Jesus was a straight, direct man, making very good sense. And so we decided that it would be very sort of just a rather shallow film just about Jesus. So we got Brian in.
You must have known that even in those early days you were heading for trouble and criticism and controversy. A, because you were well known. B, because, to put it mildly, the subject matter is quite well known.
Yeah, I don't know.
Did that worry you?
I mean, I feel that Python, we've always thrived on that. It's always been a bit of an uphill struggle.
So what came first? Was it the laughter idea or the message? I mean, which was the first of the two that...
It's the laughter. We go for the jokes first. I mean, the reason that it sounded like an interesting territory to go into, to explore, because when you go in there, you really don't know what you're going to write. I mean, we usually sit around for about 3 days discussing theoretically what we're going to write, and then we go around and write something completely different. And the film actually starts when somebody comes in halfway through the second week and reads something out, and we all laugh. And that's the first point on the graph. Yeah. Do you see what I mean?
Yes,
and then we may wait another week, and then somebody else writes something funny, and then we have 2 points on the graph, and when we've got about 6 or 7, we start writing stuff to join it together. It's a pretty slow process, because it's sort of democracy gone mad.
It took a long time. It took a long time for Brian to really get off the ground. we wrote an awful lot which was then just thrown away because it was sort of struggling too hard to be sort of controversial. Or,
Well, actually, you know, Mike, I don't know. I agree with that because I don't think that we were coming in with stuff about Christ. We all started writing about on the edges, all the people who'd arrived 5 minutes after the miracle had been done, which is as bad as being 2,000 years late. Point as if you didn't see it. You know, it doesn't matter whether you're 5 minutes late or whatever. Actually, we did have the idea that he was the 13th disciple, didn't we? A sort of slight hanger on. Yes, that's right. He was going to write a gospel, but he was always late.
Because it was also called Brian of Nazareth at one point, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And yet you changed that title, yet that would have worked, wouldn't it, for this movie or not?
Well, I think I always thought that title somehow asked for the comparison with Jesus of Nazareth. You know, the whole thing too much. It looked as though we were going for the comparison.
But you apparently used Lou Grade's sets that he used on Jesus of Nazareth. Didn't you, in fact, use the same scenario?
The ones he hadn't taken down. We used them for building our own sets in. There was temples there in Monastir, in this place in Tunisia.
It was luck, really, because at one stage we were looking for about, I think there were 5 or 6 different places we might have shot it. Italy, Spain, Jordan, Israel, Morocco, Tunisia. And I think we decided Tunisia eventually, partly because we thought there might be religious trouble in the Catholic countries, and partly because we discovered they'd been making a lot of films in the last 2 or 3 years in Tunisia. And then when you sort of say, we'll get the rushes here in the morning, you don't arrive and find there's a lot of rushes there. You know,
there's practically an industry over there of making films about Jesus, because Rossellini had made a film then. Lou Grade had been there for a couple. Rossellini, an Italian director, made a film about Jesus. Then, well, I don't know.
I missed that.
I think I missed it as well.
He was a footballer, isn't he?
I thought it was a food.
Turin, FC Turin. No, Rossellini made this film, and then I thought it was rather good.
Is he good, Rossellini?
Yeah, he's a bit slow. He worked the second half. He was very good.
Sounds like an Italian
It was
footballer.
in the back of the stand.
If he's watching, I'm terribly sorry, but I've never heard of the guy.
Well,
he's made a film. Has it come out?
He's made a film about Jesus, and it came out. Yes, I think so.
Well, the extraordinary thing is, Tim, I don't know all the facts of this because I was only told this about 4 days ago, but apparently there are now 4, quote, funny, unquote, films about the Bible coming out the next 3 months.
As a result of Brian,
Well,
or
I
just
don't know. I
coincidentally?
think it may just be coincidence. Mind you, we've been talking about it on and off for 3 years, so maybe the idea sort of filtered into somebody else's
How did the whole
consciousness.
thing get together? Because you had this great idea in an airport lounge or wherever, and still you have a fairly long way to go from Terminal 2 to screens
It was
all
a
over
very
the world.
big airport. It was ages.
Well, it is that pragmatic thing.
Because you had trouble with the cash and backers pulling out.
Terrible trouble, yes. In fact, if George Harrison hadn't known Eric Idle, the film wouldn't have been made. Because although the Americans, I mean, after the EMI thing fell through, we then went to America. No, no,
What happened, John?
I didn't say anything.
Fell through.
Fell through. Fell through. Failed to happen, as it were. We then went to America, and they were all prepared to give us a little bit of money, but not enough, not as much as we needed to make the film. So we needed, I think, $2.5 million to make it for the American territories, and they wouldn't give us more than 1.75. So come the middle of the year, we suddenly realised we weren't going to make it. And then out of the blue, John Goldstone, the producer, said, well, I've got one more meeting with George Harrison. And George Harrison, which is, I think, is really one of the great, almost magnificent acts of the century, said he was quite happy to put up £1 million for no other reason, apparently, that he wanted to see the movie.
See, I read about that when looking into the movie. Yeah, it was George Harrison of the Beatles. When basically funding fell apart for Life of Brian, he literally stepped in and effectively funded it and saved the movie. And so history was made as a result of the Beatles.
It's true, yeah.
Weren't you all in some danger of splitting up, or at least some internal conflict? Did the film, in fact, bring you together?
Yes, I mean, I think it did. But after the Grail, there was about a year spent sort of in the wilderness, as it were. No one quite sure what they wanted to do. And people going off to try and do their own things, Fawlty Towers or ripping yarns or whatever.
Also, there was a stage when we hated each other.
Well, I never hated you, John.
Oh,
No, whatever any of the others may say, I always liked you.
What about your solo projects? I mean, are there going to be any more Ripping Yarns, any more Faulty Towers?
There'll be no more Faulty Towers.
He sent me a wonderful telegram last week when I had my 40th birthday, and it read, "We love the first 40, stop. Are you going to do any more?"
You got it right.
Well, are you? I mean, is there going to be a...
I don't think so, no. I feel we've done that, just as I felt about Python and the telly, that you actually reach a point and then it's the law of diminishing returns. You could go on.
And does that mean there won't be any more Pythons on the telly?
Highly unlikely at the moment.
But not
highly unlikely.
totally
Well, not
ruled out?
totally. I mean, I don't think anything is absolutely, definitely ruled out.
I tell you what I hate, and that's the sausage machine. And you get into it
Yes.
the moment you sign on the dotted line. 13 shows. That's 8 months in the diary, filming, editing, rehearsing. It's much nicer to take 1 2-hour or hour and a half thing, like a film, and spend a lot of time, and then you can savour it and explore and do a lot of talking, which is much better than having to get everything written every day.
See, John gets very oppressed by work, you see. What I feel about the Python shows is that actually I don't know where we would start off. I think we almost did everything in those 3 series, and I just don't know how
I mean,
one
we're
would begin
practically
again.
doing it tonight because we were saying in the dressing room,
Yes.
you know, I mean, it's terribly funny. It suddenly struck us that here we are, you know, in a Bishop and Malcolm Muggeridge are going to come on. You know,
In the studio tonight.
Yes.
you know, it's not a sketch.
It may be, John.
I mean, yeah, from what I've heard,
Are you implying that possibly there might be a third or fourth Python movie, a full-length film? This is certainly on the cards.
Yes, in fact, we're supposed to be meeting, aren't we? November the 19th?
Monday week,
Your
I
place?
think. Yeah.
To discuss this very thing. I think it's very likely that we'll do another film.
But we want to see if there's an area that nobody's gone into, really. You see, because the one thing about this film, I mean, I really like it, and there's a lot of stuff we've done I don't like that much. But I really like this film. And there are moments when I watch it, and I think, I haven't seen anything like this before. On the
that
screen.
is true. That is
Is
true.
there anything that you think could offend you on screen?
Good question.
I think I have one tiny quibble, and I think
Apart from the
that
veto.
Terry Jones and Graham Chapp will no doubt disagree with me. But I think that the crucifixion thing at the end is not about pain. It's about death, and they are very separate.
So what's your beef?
My beef is that there are 1 or 2 close-ups of 1 or 2 people registering pain. And I think that confuses what the last thing's about. Because, I mean, one's not really making fun of the fact that someone has been flayed till his flesh hung down and then nailed up. The point of that last thing is it's about death. You know, it's about attitudes to death. And it's quite possible to be relatively cheery about death. Quite possible. I'm not saying it's easy.
Yes.
That is such a such a wise thought process there, because I mean, obviously the time me recording this, Monty Python's Life of Brian, my reaction to it hasn't even gone live, so I don't know what people's general perceptions are towards the end of the movie. I thought it was bonkers because of the song that played out, you know, always look on the bright side of life. But I like that attitude because I have known people who were terminally ill, who then sadly passed away. And some look at it with a sense of fear and loss of, you know, like opportunities, you know, whether it's through their work, through experiences, whether it is, you know, like their children, grandchildren, not seeing them grow up, things like that. And then there's others who look upon that and say, you know what, I've had a good life, I've worked hard, I've seen some amazing things, I've brought children into the world, I've done this, that, the other. You know, I have no qualms with dying because it is part of life. You get born and you die. Yeah, everything in between is what you make of it. So I think that's a really a real human point of view there. I like that.
Well, for the moment, gentlemen, thank you very much. But I think we ought to see another clip from the movie. No, please. Stay where you are.
Right, is it
We're
going
going
to
to
be
see a second clip from the film, and after that we'll be joined by two gentlemen who don't normally review movies, but who this evening went to see it on our behalf.
Okay. Oh, no technical issues this time. Right, this is the running away bit. I like this bit as well.
Hey! Is there another way down? Is there another path down to the river? Please, please help me. I've got to get... Oh, my foot!
Speak to us, Master! Speak to us!
Go away!
How shall we go away, Master?
Just go away. Leave me alone. Give us a sign.
He has given us a sign. He has brought us to this place.
I didn't bring you here. You just followed me. Oh, it's still a good sign by any standard.
Master, your people have walked many miles to be with you. They are weary and have not eaten.
It's not my fault they haven't eaten.
There is no food in this high mountain.
Well, what about the juniper bushes over there?
A miracle!
Fruitful by his words. They brought forth juniper berries. Of course they brought forth juniper berries. They're juniper bushes. What do you expect?
Gin!
Do not tempt him, shallow ones. Is not the miracle of the juniper bushes enough? I say, those are my juniper bushes.
Oh no, we can see the bomb.
All I've bloody got to eat.
No, I don't want to see the bear mouse again.
I am affected by a bald patch. I'm healed. The master has healed me. I didn't touch him. I was blind and now I can see.
And I guess...
Still great. Still great.
And our guest reviewers are Malcolm Muggeridge and Mervyn Stockwood, the Bishop of Southwark. I'd like to ask you, Bishop, first.
Right, this is the point where apparently it gets heated. So make sure you got some popcorn on hand because this could be really juicy. But yeah, just at this brief point, I just want to say, yeah, that is a really great scene, really great fun. And again, it's not making fun, in my opinion, of people who follow their messiahs or follow people in general. I think it's the lengths that people go to when they follow someone. That's what I think they're poking fun at.
What was your review of the film?
Well, first of all, I was very glad to think that you simply can't get rid of Jesus in Europe today. Ceausescu of Romania, who I think thought like most communists that they're going to get rid of religion very quickly, find that it's, as he said, it's going to hang around with us for quite a long time. And certainly, when you think of what one of the greatest attractions on the stage, both films and acting, ever since Jesus Christ Superstar, that's what's drawn the crowds. I mean, Jesus is a most disturbing influence. You simply can't get away from him. You may worship him, respect him, commit your life to him, or just ridicule him and lampoon him, but you simply can't get rid of him. And this is what I think is a very, very interesting fact. Even in China, in their changeover now, they thought Chairman Mao's thoughts had replaced the thoughts of Jesus, but poor old Mao and the Gang of Four now really they're on the dog heap, and Jesus is being allowed back. So that, first of all, is something which I find extremely interesting. Now, the second thing here's a question I would ask. What are you really trying to say in this film. I believe you were on this a wee bit earlier, but unfortunately we only got the picture outside, not the voice, which was something that husbands might want for their wives.
Yeah, many technical issues in this interview, in this show.
But so we didn't quite hear your defence of it. But what are you really trying to say? Now, I wasn't the least bit horrified. And people say, oh, no, Bishop, when you go there, you'll be absolutely horrified. I wasn't at all. After all, I wasn't vicar of the university church for nothing. I'm familiar with undergraduate humour.
Shots fired!
Governor of a mentally deficient school. And once I was a prep school master, and I felt frightfully at home. I thought I was just sort of back on the old familiar ground this evening. But I really wondered, what you were trying to say. I do hope you don't think I'm being unkind, because I know some of you, and I'm very fond of you and have respect for you. But I say this quite frankly, I simply don't think it was worthy of you. It was the sort of thing, as I say, that at Cambridge the footlights did on a damp Tuesday afternoon, or the lower fourth when I was a schoolmaster. But I just don't know what you were saying. Then the third thing, unless I get rather more serious, why lampoon death? I think this is the thing that really is, sort of worried me. I don't think I would make a fuss about Auschwitz or of death. And whatever we think about Jesus, we may think he was the Son of God, we may think he was a mistaken fanatic, but it was a pretty shattering thing what happened, the crucifixion. And as I looked at that, and I thought of now the way people react to the cross, and after all, I'm not ashamed to wear the cross here, which is the sign of a bishop. When I look at that figure, I know you're going to say Brian isn't Jesus, but that's just rubbish. The whole thing is quite clearly, if no Jesus had lived, that film wouldn't have been produced.
My issue, right, with the crucifix as a symbol of Christianity. I get it from a standpoint of the religion, that Jesus died for our sins and all this kind of stuff. But what you have to take into consideration is that wasn't like a unique event. It's not like saying that was the only time ever in history that someone was crucified, was put on a cross. That was a very common thing around that time that the Romans did. And it turned it from, in a way, I don't want to say quite as comparable to something like Auschwitz and the gas chambers and stuff like that, because that does nothing comparable to that. But it's like taking that as something that was done to many, 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 many people, but turning it into almost a I don't know what the right word is. A symbol that this is a true meaning. This is what it was. I hope you get what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to word it. I'm probably not very good at wording it in the right way, but I hope you get what I'm trying to say.
Did you feel that the film actually ridiculed Jesus?
Yes, I did.
Even though it wasn't about him and...
Well, I'm afraid, you see, I can't take it wasn't about him. I put that as a matter of honesty. If Jesus of Nazareth had never existed, there'd never been a Jesus, then this film of Brian would never have been produced. I'm sure that's his... But if I might just say, and then do come and cross-examine me then, but my mind is just sort of working on that last scene, sort of the reaction. There it seemed sort of tremendous sort of joke, and people were laughing. And then you think of the reaction of a person like Mother Teresa to that scene, what it meant for her. Now, she's a saint, I'm not. But every day of the week I either say Mass or I'm present at Mass. I was this morning in the early hours, and I broke the bread. This is my body. And I took the cup.
What's Mother Teresa got to do with this?
It's my blood. And I didn't roar around with laughter at the altar in my chapel this morning. I just fell down, genuflected, and worshipped, said my Lord and my God. Now, I don't think really that you come and get at me now.
Well,
I'm not criticising any of you personally.
Well, I hasten to say that I had absolutely nothing to do with the film whatsoever. But before I ask John and Michael to perhaps answer one or two of those points, could I bring in Malcolm and ask you what your review, if review is the right word?
Certainly, yes. Remember that I was engaged for 4 years in the appalling task of trying to make English people laugh as editor of Punch. It's an almost impossible thing to do. But I couldn't help feeling enormous envy of the ease with which this particular film aroused laughter. You simply had to use a 4-letter word or display a man's private parts in the window, and the whole place fell on the ground with laughter. So that I, professionally felt rather put out by that. Also, of course, I agree entirely with the bishop that it is quite humbug to say that this is not a ridiculing of the founder of the Christian religion and of the Incarnation in an extremely cheap and tenth-rate way. Remember that that story of the Incarnation was what our whole civilization began with. Remember that it has inspired every great artist, every great writer, every great composer, every great builder, every great architect, that to celebrate that marvelous thing.
Germany,
the
Inquisition and so forth, it's sort of...
Yes, the Inquisition...
Yeah, that's the thing, it inspired some pretty horrific stuff as well as some good stuff, so I wouldn't use that as an amazing defence.
But nothing can alter the fact that if you were to make a list of all the greatest works of art in all fields and all the greatest contributors to those works of art, you would find that this scene of the Incarnation, the story of the Incarnation, has played the largest part. Now, in our 20th century, this film produces a sort of graffiti version of it. And I don't think, in the eyes of posterity, it will have a very distinguished place. The bishop mentioned Mother Teresa, and I was thinking of her too, because to her,
Why?
you see, and it's something that the makers of this program maybe didn't even think of, but the person of Jesus Christ, not as a historical figure, not as someone in the past, but someone living in the world now, has been the essence of her existence. I once asked her what was the difference between what she did and what social workers do. And she said, well, the point is that social workers are very estimable people, but they do something, they serve their fellows for an idea. I serve my fellows for a person. And if that person wasn't there, or if that person was in some way discredited, then my work is over. And there are many people in the world, despite the fact that the media would suggest the contrary, to whom still this living presence of Jesus Christ in the world is the most essential part of their existence. And you produce it in a film as a derisory and absurd figure. And of course, to someone who has that feeling, as Mother Teresa has, or someone like Catherine Bramwell Booth has, they are deeply hurt and insulted. That doesn't in itself matter. I'd like to put another point to two that occurred to me when I was watching it, which
Malcolm,
is...
I'm awfully sorry to interrupt, but is it possible for John perhaps to answer one or two of those
Certainly,
points?
certainly.
Otherwise we're going to have
Certainly.
9 points unanswered.
I would just very quickly say, like, I don't think at any point Jesus was satirist. Again, you know the word I'm trying to say. He was never, made in a humorous way or anything in the movie of Life of Brian. There was literally only, two examples basically where Jesus featured. One being the birth, where it was literally what they weren't poking fun at was Jesus. It was poking fun at the kings or the shepherds or whoever it was that went to the wrong stable and gave the presents to the wrong baby because Brian happened to be born literally in like the stable pretty much next to him. So it's more poking fun at the kings there, more so than Jesus. And then the other time was the fact when Jesus was delivering the Sermon on the Mount or whatever thing it was that he was preaching. That, and again, because I mentioned it when I was doing the reaction, that it was pretty much the text from the Bible. What it was poking fun at was, again, maybe the people towards the back that wouldn't have been able to hear him and so misheard stuff. That's what it was poking fun at, not Jesus the figure.
Yes, it's building up the list a bit. But I mean, the problem that we... No, seriously, the problem that we have got is that you think that we're ridiculing Jesus. And we say, sort of sincerely and truthfully, that is certainly not what we intended to do, and I believe that we're not. And I can best answer that, I think, by answering Alvid's question, which is that what were we trying to do? And I think it comes out, it was spelled out perhaps rather too plainly, rather too banally at one point, when he says, make up your own mind, don't let other people tell you. And we would absolutely deny, at least I would, that there was any attempt to say you should not believe in Christ. What we're saying is take a critical view, find out about it, don't just believe because somebody tells you to. Somebody in the pulpit says something, question it, work it out yourself.
You're seriously suggesting that if someone saw that film, say a young kid who knew nothing about the Gospels or about history, that the figure of Christ that would emerge from it, this story of the Incarnation, would be a noble one, would be...
He would have to sort it out for himself. And he would have to, for example, work out, I mean, does one accept every word in the Bible? In the Sermon on the Mount, did they get it all right when Mark wrote it down 30 years later? I mean, was every word right?
But is the film likely to be seen by anybody who doesn't know an awful lot about Jesus Christ?
Most certainly it is today. If you have it for children of 14 today, you will find that the many, many children of 14 today, thanks to the secular nature of the education they're receiving, know nothing about it at all. And they would see this figure in the light in which he appears in this film, you see. It's no good you cheating yourselves. You can't have it both ways. You produce this particular film, which arouses bursts of laughter, as I said earlier, rather easily procured. But don't imagine that someone seeing that is going to go away with the concept of the founder of the Christian religion and all that that meant to mankind in any way corresponding to what history or the Gospels or anything else is presented.
Well, it's not supposed to be about him, so people shouldn't go and see it to learn about it.
That is not about him.
I'm not being dishonest. I mean,
You're being utterly dishonest,
Can I just say, I don't know where this will get us, but I feel my approach to the film was I was confused. I feel I'm still asking questions, seeking solutions. I am very confused and perturbed by a religion, an established religion in this country, where people can go into church on a Sunday morning, and the same people can sing hymns and say prayers. And at the same time, these people can stand by while their money is spent making bombs, making guns, building up appalling weapons of destruction, can sit by, sing hymns, say their prayers, and agree with a policy in which hospitals have to go without money.
First of all, I'd very much like to know where you get your evidence. You must give me chapter and verse. So it happens that immediately before coming here, I was asked by crowds of church people if I would stand up for the councils of the health of St. Olave's Hospital, which the government is trying to close. The church is extremely active in these fields, and I would urge you not to make these careless generalizations which are not dependent on evidence. Now,
I make them in all humility. I'm seeking answers and solutions. I'm not saying this is absolutely the way it is, but I have observed people...
I mean, what you were saying, if I may say, it was great, but it's sheer rubbish. And you made a ridiculous generalization which is unworthy of an educated man. Now, having said this, back to what you say, somebody aged 14 coming and seeing this thing of Jesus, what you are seeing is not one of the greatest teachers in the world. I mean, granted, lots of people, the majority of people wouldn't accept him as the Son of God as I do, but surely most of us would see him as one of the greatest teachers of the world. Now, you wouldn't guy Socrates or make him appear as a clown. And what I think
Maybe
this
there are funny
film...
things about it. Maybe there are funny things about Socrates. Why should we make jokes about
Well,
Socrates?
if there are certain aspects of you would not Socrates.
That's not my point. I don't know enough
Socrates
about
also
Socrates.
was
Maybe he was funny.
murdered. He was made to drink poison. You wouldn't guy him at that point or make him appear as a clown. And what I say, and I'm afraid you won't ask my conviction, John, over this, is that this most what is to a Christian most sacred moment of the whole Jesus experience, namely his death.
Did I watch the same movie as this dude? Because we've got very different views.
That at that most sacred moment, he was guyed and made to look as a clown.
May I make another point just here, which is rather interesting, that if you'd made that film about Muhammad, you see, there would have been an absolute hullabaloo in this country, because all the sort of the racial, anti-racialist people would have risen up in their might. The same people who would approve of this and would have said this is quite disgraceful. And behind people's minds would be the thought of maybe they might lose a bit of oil, by doing it. But you see the difference.
You're right, Malcolm. I mean, 400 years ago, we would have been burnt for this film. Now, I'm suggesting that we've made an advance.
And I'm suggesting that compared with other presentations of this great event, the Incarnation, you have not made an advance, and that anybody in the future who might dredge up this miserable little film, and it's quite possible they might as a piece of social history, they would certainly not wish to relate it to the thing, say, Chartres Cathedral, which is built to the glory of Christ.
Not a funny building, actually.
But they might want to compare it with 40 Towers.
Yes.
I mean, nearly 45 years later, people are still watching and talking about it.
And not even intended to be a funny building.
Well, it has the gargoyles on it,
Michael.
I think that, and I've seen this in the sort of reviews of the film, they concentrate always on the religious angle. Even before they've seen it, they've decided this is a film about religion. I don't think it is entirely. I think that what we've chosen to do is what we've always done in Python. We've done for 3 series and done for 3 films. We have taken a certain group of people, which are generally sort of England in the present day, and put them into a historical context. I think that's what we've done with this film. I think it isn't entirely about religion. It's about the people who live in anyone who lives and makes up our society today.
It's also about closed systems of thought, whether they're political or theological or religious, whatever. Systems by which whatever evidence is given to the person, he merely adapts it, fits it into his ideology. You show the same event to a Marxist and a Catholic, for example, they both of them fine, they both have explanations of it. I mean, it's what to be pompous poppers on about with falsifiability of theories. I mean, once you've actually got an idea that is whirring round so fast that no other light or contrary evidence can come in, then I think it's very dangerous. I don't think it's dangerous to someone like Malcolm, because he's actually a very nice man. But I think he is the sort of guy that this film is actually having a go at, because I don't think that there's any evidence that can come to him now that is going to make him rethink. Am I right? Am I making a mistake?
Well, you can leave that out. I think I could say with utter sincerity that there was nothing in this particular film that would lead me to want to change conclusions that I've reached after living for 76 years in this world.
Is there anything? That's the point I'm making.
Well, in this film, there was nothing that could possibly, because the film itself bore so little.
No, but the point I was making, Mark, is not the film. Forget the film. We'll say that's rubbish. Okay. Is there anything that can happen to you now that could cause you to change your mind?
But of course, every single person who is alive and spiritually alive is constantly reviewing his faith. I do not believe for a moment that there is a definitive faith and you say, there it is. But there's nothing in this little squalid number that could possibly affect anybody. Now, in that sense, I give you this point. I give you this point, that there's nothing in this film that could possibly destroy anybody's genuine faith. That I grant you absolutely not, because it's much too 10th rate for that. But what I still contend is that someone who is young, 14 years old, seeing that without any particular background, might really imagine that that buffoonery is an expression of this great episode.
Well,
which...
you see, I was also, you talked about the presentation of Christianity. I mean, I went to an English preparatory school and an English public school, Clifton College, or the sports academy.
I sympathise with you.
I was given 8 or 10 years of a form of Christianity which I grew to despise and dislike. Largely, it insulted my intelligence. The sermons that were given at the age of 11 and 12, I felt insulted my intelligence. When I got into writing this film, and we all had exactly the same reaction, we started to discover a lot of stuff about Christianity, and I started to get angry. Because I started to think, why was I given this rubbish, this 10th-rate series of platitudes, when there were interesting things to have discussed? There were factual
And
things.
you feel
Nobody
the
ever
interest-
told me.
you feel
Nobody
the-
ever told me that they don't know what language the Gospels were written in, that they don't even know who wrote them, and they're not even sure what cities they were
Well, then
written
you
in.
must have read very superficially at your school. That's all.
Look, John, it's very bad luck for you, but you see, I used to go to Clifton College to preach very often when you were there. I know the headmaster, I know the staff, I know the servants. All I can say is you must have been as idle a boy, as splendid an
Oh,
actor
look at
as
his
you
face.
are.
I wasn't
Because
actually, I was
if
always
you
open.
really to take this seriously, I mean, you had some absolute first-class teachers.
Those services were a joke. They were a joke.
Well, only because you made them. You
No.
cannot.
I was
how
open.
do you know about?
I
I know people who've Clifton College of exactly your own period.
I
who are
remember
now
the
priests in
sermons.
my diocese.
I remember the sermons. I remember.
You don't
writing
remember mine. Tell me what I preached on.
No idea. I only remember the bad ones.
Well,
I remember a gentleman coming and telling us how very difficult it had proved to get the Bible into Tibet. You know, they'd had 7 occasions. The first time there'd been landslides, the second time there'd been rains and the pages had got stuck together. The third time, no, this is true. The third time the mules had fallen off the mountainside. The fourth time there were thunderbolts. And the 7th time he said, God helped us. And we got the Bibles into Tibet. And the obvious conclusion was that he was trying like hell to stop them getting
we are lampooning this because by O-levels and A-levels, going on the whole time, people have taken the scripts. They'd had to have studied Greek, perhaps Hebrew, and have had made a serious study of the scriptures. You chose not to do that. I'm sure
We
you
made
had
a
far more
superficial
interesting
study.
things to
We
do.
only had 4 years to write the film. We didn't want to get too specialist because if we got too
I'm
specialist...
sorry, I'm talking about Clifton College. But still, I don't really think this has got very much to do with the
Could I
subject.
just ask, as I think in theory anyway, a sort of moderator, I'm supposed to be
Of the
neutral.
Church of Scotland or the Church of England? Moderating church.
I'm supposed to be in the middle, but didn't you? I mean, I felt when I saw the film, and I saw it in a cinema in New York with a very appreciative audience. Did you not feel that, in fact, the people being lampooned were the followers rather than Jesus himself? I felt that very strongly.
No, I don't think so. It was, I really felt, I mean, the crucifixions above all else, which are things I felt sad about because, I mean, I'm quite sure, as all of us will one day, and this is not trying to attack your vulnerabilities, but life is very short. All of us will be on our deathbeds in a comparatively short time. And when we are, and that'll be no laughing matter, that it is much that Christ which I should like to be held up in front of me than the Christ I saw
But the
on
film
the cross
did
this afternoon.
May I
bring home to
suggest-
me.
sorry, yeah.
I was going to say very quickly that the film reminded me of something which I obviously knew, but one tends to forget, that it wasn't only Jesus that was crucified. I mean, an awful lot of people were crucified in the most horrific
Thank you!
circumstances every day of the week under Roman rule.
yes.
Thank you!
And that fact came home in the film. You realise that Jesus didn't have a sort of total copyright to crucifixion.
Yeah, but Jesus was crucified, wasn't he, for his obedience to the will of God. You
But he was,
can't say you can't.
crucified surely for blasphemy.
Yes, they accused him of blasphemy because he was obedient to the will of God and of his kingdom. You can't say that came over today, that with any of the people who were being crucified,
No, but that wasn't
they
true.
were, I mean, the whole way that it was done, they were not dying for a noble idea.
Well, neither were the...
Yeah, but I mean, I think that what... Can I just make the point I was trying to make earlier on about the film not being seen entirely in religious terms? That, I mean, as Tim has said, people were crucified then as common criminals. It was just a form of capital punishment employed by the Romans, who were regarded as a highly civilized people. But it was capital punishment. And in the film, we examine attitudes to capital punishment. As far as I know, in this country, the majority of people we are constantly told are in favour of capital punishment. It just seems that we haven't come that far in all that time.
Why do you think that through all these centuries of Christendom, that the greatest minds, the most creative minds, the greatest artists were believers in this thing that you airily dismiss and say that you, making this little film, have managed to see deeply into it?
I can't say they are. What about Freddie Eyre? What about Bertrand Russell? You dismiss them, of course. They don't count.
I said in the centuries of Christendom. I didn't say in our time. I said that if you were to make a list of all the people who have contributed most
of them would have been
literature.
Muslims if they'd been living in the Arab countries, or Buddhists if they'd been living in...
What has that got to do with it? These people were inspired. These people were inspired by this event, which you have celebrated in this film by a lot of people on crosses singing a sort of, as though it's sort of rather inferior musical.
Death perhaps doesn't matter that much, which after all you're saying the whole time. You're looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to it keenly, but I'm looking forward to it. About it. No, I'm looking forward to it keenly because I know, because I relate it to these very things that you dismiss. I relate it to the story of the Incarnation, this great drama of the Incarnation, which you have reduced to a sort of comic film. Now, you think that in doing that, you have shed light. I have to tell you that you haven't shed light. You've made some rather bad jokes, and the only reason that people come to see it is because they still relate it to this extraordinary story of the Incarnation, which is, in fact, the beginning and the end of everything that our civilization stands for. Our civilization began with a man, the Apostle Paul, telling pagan world about the Incarnation. That was the beginning of it.
We're not the only civilization in the world.
Not at all. No, I'm not saying we are.
There's a lot of civilizations
Certainly.
with different religions,
Certainly.
right?
I'm not...
And the important thing is that people should be open to the various possibilities and that they should take a critical attitude
Yes, but
to them.
whoever said they shouldn't be open? But you don't make people open by producing the sort of buffoonery that you produce.
You certainly don't make people open by giving them the kind of garbage I was given at the
He has got a point, hasn't he? You know, some religious leaders are very, very preachy. There's nothing wrong with trying to set a good example. You know, be kind to one another and to respect one another and don't commit adultery and you know, things like that. But there's a line, isn't there? There's a line where some people will preach it too far. Like I remember one particular lesson I had at school, which I just absolutely hated, and that probably is what forced me away from Christianity and religion in general, because I was obviously raised going to a Church of England school, and we went to church on Sundays, like Sunday school and whatnot. But when you get to that point that they're pushing you away rather than drawing you in, that's the point that you're just like, no, you've gone too far.
Very sympathetic to you for having received this garbage, some of it at the hands of our friend the Bishop here. I'm very sympathetic indeed, and I think it's very sad and tragic that you should have been cut off from something that's so wonderful and only given garbage. But I would simply point out to you that if you care about what constitutes what we call Western civilization, which now probably is coming to an end, and you were to consider the role that's been played in that by this thing that you treat as a piece of buffoonery, you would have a certain humility in saying that you have been able, through making it, to shed light upon something.
But you keep making the basic assumption. Sorry, let me just say this, Mike. You keep making the basic assumption that we are ridiculing Christ and Christ's teaching, and I say that we are not.
But do you imagine that your scene, for instance, of the Sermon on the Mount, the scene in your film of the Sermon on the Mount
Yeah.
is not ridiculing one of the most sublime utterances
No,
that any
it's
human
not.
being has ever spoken on this earth. Of course it is.
No, it's
Absolutely
making fun
not.
of the guy who's remembered it wrong and of the people who don't understand it and miss the point.
Thank
I think
you!
that's really unfair because I think that a lot of people looking in will think that we have actually ridiculed Christ physically. Christ is played by an actor, Ken Colley. He speaks the words from the Sermon on the Mount. He's treated absolutely respectfully. The camera then pans away. We go right to the back of the crowd to someone who shouts, "Speak up," because they cannot hear him. Now, I mean, if that utterly, undermines one's faith in Christ, then I think a faith cannot be terribly strong.
I started off by saying that this is such a 10th-rate film that I don't believe that it would disturb
Yes, I know you
anybody's
started with an open
faith.
mind. I realise that.
Oh, they're so annoyed. They're so pissed
John,
off.
can I put you a question? Now, without, I hope, in any way sort of being pompous, I mean, I have been Bishop of South London now for over 20 years, and I'm appalled by the sadness, the unhappiness, the tragedy of life, and the drug scene, the violence, the muggings, and so on.
Oh, right. I
And-
just got what it was on about.
And many people now are standing back with a measure of deep disturbance and horror. I was at at Cambridge only the Sunday before last, and I'm told how the undergraduates are now turning up in chapel and seeing if Christianity has got something to offer. There, I think, I mean, most of us, I'm sure we'd be all, however much we may differ on this film, that we are deeply disturbed by what's going on in the world and in this country. Now, there is a desire to find truth, to find some answer to our problems. And the question, I mean, I would put to you, I mean, could you really put your hand on your heart and say that that film is going to help the younger generation and its
Absolutely.
pilgrimage
Yes.
for truth?
If they think
Well,
about
John.
it, absolutely. The message is, what is it, Mike? What are the words? Work it out for yourself. You're all individuals. Don't do what people tell you to do. And that's not the...
You
that's
find that a final...
No, starting point.
Starting point.
Including the lampooning of Christ.
And the lampooning of his death, which is the most
Lampooning.
No, it was-
disgraceful
well, I
part
think that's
of the whole
just
thing.
we
Surely,
disagree on
Malcolm,
that.
it was
I
the
can't-
lampooning of a form of death, which happened to
You're
hundreds of
lampooning
people.
a scene which has been played a fantastic part in the lives of believers for generations, a scene that has inspired the most amazing disinterestedness, creativity, that set St. Francis of Assisi wandering about the streets,
true,
that inspired St. Augustine to write The City of God.
This I accept, but I
all
think
that
the
is true, and all
crucifixion-
you've done is to make a lot of people on a cross singing a music hall song. I mean, it's so disgusting
Could I
when you
just say
think
that
of it.
A lot
You
of
see?
people go away very happy, laughing at that, their faith not touched one jot.
I don't think it'll
really
touch your
do.
faith.
I
I don't think it'll touch
it
your
will.
faith.
And then we come back at this point. And a lot of people on the first Good Friday went away from Calvary laughing their heads off and thinking the death of Jesus was a tremendous joke.
But that's very true, you know. Because
So,
all
not as
you've
big
done
of a
is
clap
the
as that.
person you followed in this film is Herod. Because it was Herod who organised this absurd scene, and I'm only amazed that you didn't get some comic effects out of the Crown of Thorns. That's the only thing that puzzles
Martin,
me in
if
the
you
film.
wanted to make a joke out of Jesus, Jesus would have appeared on the cross. He was an actor, he was there in the film. He does not appear on the
No,
cross.
but you
Nowhere
make-
at all. It's a gang of thieves, of common criminals who were at that time crucified in hundreds day by day. I mean, that's... I'm sorry, I know that you think I'm wrong, but that's what I feel.
I
It is
think
not Christ.
I think it's a ludicrous thing,
Can I just
because
say
I
that
tell you that the
cruci-
people see...
Malcolm,
This is what the film's about. You see,
Malcolm,
the
can I just say
impossibility.
that to an outsider, the crucifixion is a much stronger event if one realises that Christ went through something that everybody went through. If you treat it like
Yes.
something that only he went through, which is the image you get. I never realised I was about 16 that everybody got crucified.
If he was crucified between...
I also have to say that we have to-
He was crucified between two thieves. If you're saying that the experience
Yes, but
of those three people was the same experience simply because they went through the same physical experience, then you are utterly misunderstanding what the crucifixion means, what the passion means, why it's had this enormous role in people's lives. It wouldn't have had that role if it was simply one of innumerable men dying on a cross. It's because of what it signified that in terms of the incarnation, and of course you leave that all out of account. What you've done is you've succeeded in doing, and that for that reason it will have absolutely no influence in the long run. You have succeeded in reducing something which has inspired the greatest art into something which is presented in terms of the lowest art. That's your feat. That's your
set up your own terms that we have to influence people. We're not saying we want to influence people. We're trying to make them laugh, make them happy. I mean, that's something that helps.
Gentlemen, I'm going to have to call a halt. I'm very sorry. I think you've made people happy and made them think and made them laugh. And
I think we'll make them talk about it.
I can't.
Well,
yes, they've definitely done that.
You'll get your 30 pieces of silver.
Well, I hasten to add that.
Wow. They're still cracking on.
You're missing the most wonderful thing in life, and you're seeing it in those terms, and it's utterly tragic.
Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Utterly tragic.
I hope that film won't shake anybody's faith.
A few moments later.
Okay, so that was my reaction to the debate of the life of Brian. I basically, I did continue on and basically watched the rest of this episode. There wasn't really anything that was going to be of interest to anyone, of my personal opinion. It basically consisted of me of rocking along to a bit of a blues anthem, which was pretty damn good, and an interview which, I mean, didn't really interest me. So I'm cutting it from the reaction. I'm literally just doing it based on the Life of Brian stuff today. So apologies to any of you who wanted to maybe see the full thing, but there was no need for me to do that. But ultimately, with that, I personally think that John Cleese and Michael Palin came out of that looking very good. They were very respectful and diplomatic. And the other two, the bishop and the other guy, the broadcaster guy, I think. And again, I'm trying to be a diplomat here and be, unbiased. But they clearly went into watching Life of Brian with a certain expectation. Now, if anyone doesn't realise, that I didn't initially realise, because I obviously spoke about this came out the day that the movie came out. Technically, this wasn't the day the movie came out, because it actually came out in the summer of 1979 in America first, didn't get released in the UK until a few months later, which was quite surprising, at least to me. I mean, I don't know if Monty Python was a huge thing in America, or maybe it was just because it was more of a religious kind of related thing. That's maybe why they put it into America first, because obviously America, I would say, at least from a population point of view, it has a lot more people that are probably Christians than here in the UK. But, they've probably seen reviews and they've probably heard about it being banned in certain countries and things. And I don't think it is a movie that deserved to be banned. I don't think it is a movie that deserved the criticism that it got. Especially when you talk about the religious aspect of it. You take a lot of the arguments that they were trying to say, they, in my personal opinion, saw a very different movie than I did. They saw a movie that had Jesus that was being crucified and they were making fun of him. That they were making fun of the words that he spoke. The words that were written that were based on him. That's not what it was poking fun at. You had, like I said, the two instances that Jesus appeared in this movie was the Sermon on the Mount aspect, which, like they said in there, like I said before that, it's ridiculing the people that misheard them, that were stuck at the back, that were, a good few hundred meters away, that couldn't really hear what they were saying. So when he said, blessed are the meek, or whatever the actual sentence is, they said, blessed are the Greek. And it's saying that in theory, the Gospels could, not saying they were, but could have been a whole bunch of Chinese whispers that it got passed down from person to person, and over time it got misrepresented what was actually said. That's what it's taking fun at. That's not saying that the Sermon on the Mount is a horrible thing that shouldn't be trusted or anything like that. It's saying that, you know, sometimes people will mishear stuff and misinterpret stuff, as they clearly did. They misinterpreted the point of this movie. And I think that's a shame, because let's take the symbolism aspect of it out of the picture. Let's just look at it from a comedy standpoint. For me, it was a very funny movie. And yes, you could say that there are some aspects of it that, in theory, aren't as funny in a modern day. Like you had the whole scene with like two of the guys that were when they were giving the crosses out to various people, and you had one guy with like that they were making had like a serious kind of speech kind of impediment and stuff. That wasn't necessarily that funny. That for me, in a modern sense, felt a little bit cringy. The other stuff, the one with like Pilot and with Bigger Stickers, their speech impediment, that one was more funny. But again, I don't necessarily think it was like making fun of people with speech impediments, like in general. It's, the people with the power who try to command that power and yet are idiots, basically. And I'm not saying that he's an idiot because they had the speech impediments or anything like that. It was, that's the angle that I interpreted from it. Personally, again, you may have a different point of view with that one, and I welcome anyone who has a difference of opinion. Especially if you are religious, please put your comments down below. Let me know what you think of The Life of Brian, because I would be really interested to know. And again, keep any comments you put down there very respectful, because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all entitled to our own opinions. We're all entitled to have our own viewpoints. But for me personally, them two kind of guests on this chat show, I think they missed the point, in my personal opinion. But that is going to do it for my reactions to The Life of Brian. I would definitely like to see more Monty Python. If there's anything specifically that you think I should check out, let me know in the comments down below. If you're new, please do consider subscribing, turn on notifications, all the usual bits and bobs. But that's going to do it for today. So thank you very, very much. For now, my name is Kevin. I am a geek, and you've been watching Kevin the Geek. Goodbye.